talk business, we could talk sports, and evidently we could talk bourbon. So there's a lot of
that's a fact too. Yeah, we can have some fun.
That's good stuff. What a beautiful day we have today in St. Louis. You guys see any of the air show going on? I know they had the practice runs.
Yeah, yesterday. Yeah. My office just down the street, and so we were hearing it all day long.
Yeah, I was roughing. I got distracted. I saw these, the planes diving down, and I thought, I guess I got to pay attention to these girls out here.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised it hasn't gotten more publicity in St. Louis. I just haven't heard a whole lot about it. But
tomorrow the weather's not looking ideal.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
What tune do you have going for us?
This is a little acoustic Sweet Home Alabama intro.
Yeah. Like that.
Very good.
So welcome to the podcast by Pinnacle. Mark Lynch, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us here. We're in Chesterfield, and that's where you're located, right? In the Remax office in Chesterfield?
It is. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of impressive people in your industry. You're certainly no exception to that.
Thank you.
You were Indiana. Do you have a degree from Indiana and Notre Dame?
I do, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, my undergrad is, well, first of all, let me thank you for having me. I appreciate this. This will be some fun.
Yep.
Yeah, my undergrad is from Notre Dame, and then I worked a little bit and started going evenings at Indiana for my master's, and then ended up finishing that 1988. So yeah, I'm fully educated within the state of Indiana.
Well, I think you went above and beyond for the real estate requirements in the state of Missouri. But well done. But you have a background in where you were controller for a company or an accountant, or?
Yeah, I'm actually, my undergraduate degree is in accounting, and I worked in public accounting. I got my CPA and worked in public accounting for about 4 years, and then went to work for client of mine that was in the real estate development business, and that's kind of where I got the real estate bug, and haven't had it out of my system since, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you made that jump. So how long have you been in real estate now? What year did you say that was?
Well, I went to work for Harcourt Management Company was the name of it in Indianapolis, and that was in 1984. 1984, believe it or not.
So you've been around.
Yeah,
you've been doing this.
I'm a 40 guy.
Awesome,
Chris. I appreciate you recognizing Mark's Indiana education opportunities, but you had some St. Louis education, right? Prior to that,
of course, the base was poured here in St. Louis.
That's right. And where did you attend?
Well, they used to just simply say the high school. But, it's also known as St. Louis U High.
See, Chris always likes to skip over those details when we have a special guest on, but you and I can really relate to that.
I don't know, somehow whenever we have CBC graduates, it comes up more often. But I didn't know. Some people aren't comfortable saying that they went to SLU, so I didn't want to bring it up if you weren't ready for it.
Well, we do try to be humble, but if someone asks, we are obligated to respond.
That's our first class. Humility.
Well, I know. The first class is most people express their humility by saying they're humble. But I'm looking forward to a great conversation today.
Super, I am too.
We've worked on. I'll say a couple deals together, and that's how we met.
Right.
But very impressed with how you handle your clients, and doing real estate for such a long time. What motivates you still? This is you've been doing this for a while. You've had a background in several different industries. Now you're very diligent. To make sure that your clients are in the best possible place. When you wake up at this stage of your career, what motivates you every day to get out there and just, you're relentless about it? How do you? Well, what's in your head when you're doing that?
I think the bottom line is I like making a difference for people. Okay, and I think that owning residential real estate, whether as an occupant or as an investor or both, is a real solid base on which to grow, okay, especially when they're younger, buying their first homes, etc. I work with buyers of all experience levels, first time to people that have been transferred half a dozen times, etc. But I think nobody's going to retire anymore on the home they own, that's for sure. And but they can, again, set that base from which they can grow financially, and I think it's a good part of anyone's investment portfolio, even if it's the home they live in. So while I don't think you're going to get filthy rich doing that, it is going to give you opportunities if you buy it right. It's going to give you opportunities down the road, and to keep building on that and building and building and building. So I think one of the things that I really have been focused on is all my career is, again, making that difference and helping them do it right. And I had a coach tell me a long time ago, and it's an absolute truth, that you don't make real money in residential real estate when you sell. You make it when you buy, which is just another way of saying it's critical that you buy on the right terms, including price. So I've always, with being a CPA and master's in finance, numbers kind of sing to me. So I've always felt that was maybe a differentiating factor for me versus some of my peers. And my clients seem to really like that. It certainly allows me to stay unemotional through what is fundamentally an emotional process, whether people want to admit it or not. Buying and selling their home is fundamentally an emotional transaction. But I can stay very level-headed. I'm focused on value. I'm focused on numbers. I'm focused on terms. And to me, they're bricks and mortar. To them, it's a home that they're going to raise their family in, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll help them make the right decisions.
Okay, so that brings a good point, because sometimes I think to myself, when buying a home, an emotional purchase isn't necessarily a bad thing either. You have very analytical mindset, I would say.
Absolutely.
And you can't be too emotional, of course. Once you're too emotional, it's over. But when you're buying a house, you do have to live there and whatnot. And this corner lot may be worth more to you than it is somebody else because of your lifestyle or what you're interested in. Maybe touch on that, but also I wanted to bring up, when the investment is when you buy, and it totally makes a lot of sense. And it seems like, and we know the market's cyclical; it goes up and down, but we've been hearing for a long time, especially when rates were even lower, when rates were really low a couple of years ago. People were like, "Oh, don't buy now! Don't buy now! The prices are too high! The prices are too high!" And they've always been saying that, kind of.
Right.
It's always been the price. Don't buy now. The prices are too high. But those people, they might have lost out on 30 to 40% of gains in a short period of time. Not to say that it's going to keep going in that direction at all times. It could dip. Anything could happen. But what do you say to people who are buying now, who are saying, "I don't think I really want to buy now"? I mean, it's tough sometimes. I do see a lot of people working with different real estate agents, and sometimes I know that they're just never going to get under contract because they're not working with a professional that can actually navigate this environment. But what do you say to somebody who is thinking, "I don't think I'm going to buy now because the prices are too high"?
Well, you raised several good points there. First of all, let's go back to the emotional question. Absolutely, a buyer or seller can be emotional, frequently are, and they can afford to be, because I'm not. I'm involved in the transaction, so I'm keeping them grounded as best I can, right? But that allows them to be emotional, to enjoy. Hopefully, it's a pleasant transaction. Hopefully, it's a pleasant experience. It's not something.
It's not financing.
No, you said it. I didn't. But so that's where I come from in terms of, I'm totally unemotional, so they can be emotional, and still they can make good decisions. Okay. So on that point, that I think is a real advantage to my clients, and they know Fortunately, a lot of my clients are referrals, so they know me on some level, some better than others, but and they know they can count on me. I'm going to be grounded for them.
Yeah, I would say if you're emotional and they're emotional, that's probably not a good recipe.
Prescription for disaster, no doubt about it, for everybody.
And in that vein, my experience with you included an analysis or a recognition of the terms, and you mentioned terms or something you are interested in, and I don't think that's a characteristic that all agents possess, and you're trying to get to the closing table, but it as my background also gets excited about terms, and so I think about when we dealt, I could communicate with you on that level about, hey, this is a term we need to be aware of, and that could be impacted by X, Y, and Z event. And the details of a real estate transaction are often overlooked, I think. It's like, it's not just price and closing date.
Exactly. There's no doubt about that.
And that's why that document's 6 pages long, and all the documents in between, that you have to deal with.
And I think in the market that we're in right now, that's even truer than in a more normal market, because you've got a lot of buyers out there that are willing to offer price, but can they offer the other terms? Have they worked with their mortgage professional and put themselves in a position where they can confidently waive a financing contingency, for example? People who have not gone to that level with their lenders really have very little chance in this market right now. But unfortunately, some of them and frankly, some of their agents don't fully appreciate that, don't understand that. And going back to your point, Chris, they may never get under contract until they do figure that out. And again, put their clients and put themselves as clients in the best position to succeed. And that's something that is different in this market than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, people were thrilled to be, quote, pre-approved.
Right.
Now that doesn't do it. That doesn't get you in the door.
Yeah, and it's like you kind of touch on the evolution of the transactional process, because probably one time the goal was to do the slickest marketing and let's see if we can get somebody in this door to buy this home. And now putting a sign up might be enough to get someone in the door, but the question is, how do you analyze, how do you present the best offer to your listing client, because now you're kind of maybe bombarded with multiple offers and trying to isolate which one's going to be better, and you need to know your clients to really present that to them.
Well, the last point is really the first. When I list a home, understanding what the seller's objectives are, which might include net proceeds, it might include timing, it might include some non-financial factors. They may not want a lot of people parading through the house. Remember that thing called COVID? We had sellers that were scared. A lot of people were scared. A lot of buyers were scared. But so it's understanding what are the seller's objectives, and you got to get that up front at the time of the listing. And then with that as a backdrop, then you can help them assess what is the best offer for them. And of course, being a CPA, when I run into multiple offers, I'm heading to a spreadsheet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you try and take out a certain amount. I mean, obviously you have to present all of them, but
right.
But when it comes down to it, I mean, there's going to be a core group of 3, 4, 5 offers that are very close, or what?
Yeah, sometimes fewer, sometimes more, of course. But ordinarily, what my clients want me to do is they want me to present them. But in the end, they'll say, what are the top 2, 3, 4 we should be considering? Yeah, they always ask, what do you think? Mm-hmm. And I just, I give them the facts, they make the decision.
So how often, I'm just going to ask you a few specific questions just to see. How often, if you have a listing, how often are you accepting an offer with an appraisal waiver, or with no appraisal contingency?
On my listings, I would tell you my experience is less than a third, I would say, probably, which is probably a little less than most agents would tell you. And I probably write more than a third of my offers certainly waiving financing, okay? And most of those waive appraisal too, because the truth of the matter is, through this last 3.5 years of craziness in the market, I've not had a single buyer pay more than appraised value. And I credit that to a number of factors. One, my clients typically are good listeners, and they typically, again, appreciate the fact that I'm based on numbers, not emotion, and they're willing to walk away from situations that don't make sense for them. So a lot of it is on my clients, but at the same time, I said earlier, numbers sing to me. I know value, and so again, I'm quite proud of this. I haven't had a single buyer pay more than appraised value. Now, I have to be honest with you. This past week, I have a client who will pay more than appraised value. Mm-hmm. But you said it earlier, Chris, that sometimes there are non-financial factors that are involved, situations in their life, circumstances in their life that drive them to make that decision. And I respect that, and I'm okay with that, because they're going into it with their eyes wide open. They know what the financial implications are. And the other thing is, frankly, I know them well enough that I know they can afford to do that.
And what's his name and number?
John and Mary Doe.
Okay, I've heard of them. Well, okay, so they're willing to go over. Okay, and then how about inspection waivers? Same.
I'm really against waiving inspections, at least in their entirety, okay? And now, I did recently get an offer on a listing that they did. They just took the entire inspections contingency out of the contract.
And a walk-away clause?
Yes. Yeah, they took the whole paragraph out.
Because it doesn't mean too much if they still have a walk-away clause.
Exactly. A lot of people overlook that fact. But what many of my buyers have done strategically, if you will, is they want the right to inspect, because I really think that's pretty negligent, frankly, unless you are. I have a few clients, like I have one who's a big-time investor and rehabber, and he knows more about building homes than most builders do.
Right.
So I feel, again, his eyes are wide open going in, and he can walk through a house in 15 minutes and know whether there's significant issues.
More than most inspectors, probably.
Probably. Absolutely. So that's okay, but for the more typical buyer, I think that's very dangerous. I have a client who's the daughter of a grade school friend of mine. We looked for almost 3 years. Now, part of that was because she had a very defined geography she wanted to be within, but she had to walk away from some homes, and she wouldn't waive the inspections. And there was one I remember in Webster, and this is why I call her kind of my poster child for not waiving inspections. But we did inspections. The furnace had a cracked heat exchanger. The electric panel had water sitting in the bottom of it when the inspector opened the panel.
It's unusual.
The sewer, the sewer line underneath the house was partially collapsed, and the radon was in double digits. So when we added up those factors, and again, it's hard to dimension the sewer because it depends how much they have to dig up and replace, but I mean, she was easily looking at $12,000 worth of repairs on a $250,000 house that had she not done inspection, she would have had no way of knowing any of those problems existed. And the seller was very bold and said they wouldn't fix any of it, and I did track that property for several weeks thereafter. It went back on the market, went under contract, came back on the market, went under contract, came back on the market. Finally, the fourth time it stuck. Whether he disclosed all of these things or not, who knows? I have no way of knowing that, but I felt good that Lindsay made the right decision and stuck to her guns. But again, so waiving inspections, I think, is very perilous at best. So strategically, what many of my clients will do, depending on really their financial situation and what they feel like they are comfortable absorbing if necessary, is we'll say, we're going to do inspections, but we won't ask for repairs for any single item unless it exceeds 1,000, 5,000. I've done 10,000 on transactions, which reassures the seller that you're not going to nickel and dime them. But if someone does come in and says, I'm waiving the inspections, well, then we may just have to tip our cap to them and move on to the next property.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about hopefully it's a pleasant transaction, but then you just alluded to some potential negative situation. So one of the, and it's good to be unemotional, but you have to at least have some skill set in delivering bad news sometimes. Yeah.
You do, and I kind of prep for that potential by I explain to most of my buyers when they get under contract, congratulations, you've just bought an option to buy this home. Right. You haven't bought the home, you've bought an option to buy it, and we'll see how inspections go, and we might see how appraisal goes, especially in the old days. But so I always I'm not negative Ned, but I do point out that there's a couple of more hurdles that we got to get over, and then we'll have a celebration.
That's why the closing date is not the contract date.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
One time, my brother Pete and I bought a home, and we did we waived. I think we waived everything on it, but when we did that, the question that we asked ourselves was, if this house needed X amount of improvements, whatever the number was, if it was $25,000 worth of improvements, would we still buy it? And depending on whether that question was yes or no, kind of dictated whether we were going to move forward with that offer or not. Because, then you're at least alleviating some of that risk. I mean, you may need this or you may need that. It can't be a small number. It's got to be a significant number depending on the house. But that was a question that, once we answered it, it allowed us to at least move forward with confidence.
And your experience helped you there. I mean, in terms of having that confidence. Okay, most people who are buying a home, they don't have a basis for confidence in that kind of decision. What confidence they have is, how much money do I have in my pocket that if I have to, in a worst case scenario, invest, and does it make sense at a purchase price? If I do have to invest that, where am I relative to value?
Yeah, and you can have a sense of what that property means to you, maybe financially as opposed to everything else too. Like, if maybe this is the property and I'm willing to spend $10,000 once I get it to bring it up to a satisfactory level.
Absolutely, and am I buying? I tell my sellers this, I tell my buyers this. Homes aren't worth a single finite amount. They're worth between A and B. And where that value falls in that continuum depends on a lot of factors, including market and competition and what else is out there.
Right.
Well, so for the last 3.5 years, you're always on the upper end of the value range. You just are. That's, again, the market's pushing every buyer up there.
Chris, it just hit me when you gave that example. We didn't know this, but at the time, we might have been willing to do anything because, 30 days or less after we closed, interest rates skyrocketed. So it was actually worth a lot to us.
We kind of saw that coming because...
Exactly.
You had a little inside information, didn't you?
but not maybe to the degree of doubling the rate.
Not the fact that the rates were going to go up. We thought they might go up, but we knew that second homes... the rates were not going to be the same.
Right.
That was
for second homes anymore.
Yeah, the premium was going up.
Yeah. So it was like, after 2 years of looking, it was like, all right, well, we might want to. Luckily, the right place did come along too. But
it's great.
Just to shift gears a little bit, because we talked about this before, but we never really talked about it on this podcast. We talk a lot about mindset, and I do want to get into that. Okay. But I am glad that we're getting into some of the nuts and bolts of real estate and this market that we're in currently, in the peak of the market, really. We're in June. But the recent lawsuits, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't know if you can say that anymore. But I know there's a list of things, but what a simplified version of what has changed, and what are your thoughts on it?
So there's a lot of wringing of hands out there right now, but I'm not one of them. So essentially, the Department of Justice has stepped in and thinks they know. I better be careful here. They're not listening, are they?
It's a big podcast.
Thinks they know more about real estate residential real estate sales than anybody else. Okay, and what they're doing. So essentially, it's a disclosure issue in my world. That's how I would describe it. It's a disclosure issue, and it's really no for me. I've been making this disclosure all my career practically, and that is. The gist of it is the seller will pay me as the listing agent for my services. I will recommend to them that they offer compensation to an agent who brings a buyer. But I never said you have to, you're required to, it's illegal not to. I never used any of those terms, and some of that is what came up in the trials and in the discussions with the Department of Justice that agents were conspiring to force sellers to pay more than they should have. So, on the other side of it also, I never told a buyer that my services were free. What I told them was the seller was paying me, so it wouldn't directly take cash out of your pocket, but make no mistake about it, you're paying more for the house because the seller's paying me. Okay? So that's been true from the first day I was in the real estate business, okay? But I will say, and I'll admit and acknowledge that not everybody made those disclosures maybe as clearly as they should have been to some sellers, okay? But I think what has happened is a lot of sellers say, well, I don't really remember what the conversation was, and so because of that, I think there was some concern that sellers were doing things that they didn't have to. Yeah, but I would also tell you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you don't offer compensation to the buyer's agent, you're going to diminish the size of the pool of buyers, because now you're asking a buyer to come up with the cash to pay their agent, which means they have less cash available for down payment, they have less for closing costs, they have less for improvements, etc. So they're going to have to look at less expensive homes, which means now they're not looking at your home. So to me, in the end, we're not really ending up in a better position. In fact, it's a worse position, because I think it's kind of the equivalent of a regressive tax, if you will, in that the people who are harmed are the first-time home buyers who have struggled to build their savings so they have enough for a down payment so they can come to you and qualify for a mortgage and can buy a home and can cover the closing costs, etc. If you now don't pay their agent, at least don't offer to pay the agent, they can't afford your home anymore. So at best, as the seller, what they're going to do is they're going to come back to you and ask you to pay their closing costs. They're going to ask you to pay their agent's fees. So where are we in the end? The same spot, I think. I think we're in the same spot where the seller nets the same in that scenario, whether they paid the buyer's agent through the listing contract or they pay them through terms in the contract they accept. And the other thing that sellers have to acknowledge, because I know appraisers are acknowledging this, is that now when a home sells, they're very interested in knowing what was offered to the buyer's agent. So when they're comparing historical sales that may have offered a commission to a buyer's agent and compare it to a sale now where the buyer's paying their own, they're making an adjustment for that. So, like I said, I think it's, in a way, much ado about nothing, but that's a bit of an oversimplification, because I think in the end we've harmed the people who can least afford to be harmed. The people that have owned homes for years and have substantial equity and they have assets and resources available to them, this is a kind of a shell game. In the end, everybody's going to end up in the same spot. The seller's going to end up netting the same, the buyer's going to pay the same, except the little guy.
Yeah, first timers.
Yeah, they're the ones that are going to be disproportionately harmed by this. And the thing that aggravates me is why they can't see it, frankly. I don't know.
Right. And it leaves a lot more, I don't know, you could look at it a couple different ways, I guess. You could say it gives more certainty, but it also gives a lot more uncertainty, because if you're showing houses to an individual, because you need, it seems like most people I've talked to have already had that agreement in place before they show houses, but if
we all will now.
Yeah, so you have to have that. If you charge, let's just say you charge 3% on a $300,000 loan, then it's I don't know. It's just different. It's either going to be paid by the seller, or you're going to have to come out of pocket for it, or you're going to have to come out of pocket for some. It's going to be reflected in the sales price. It's just a little bit more uncertainty. If you're a first-time home buyer, let's say you're buying a house and you're putting 5% down, $300,000. That's $15,000 plus. You have another. Closing costs have just been going up. Everything, credit reports, appraisals, everything's been
surveys
going up a lot. Credit reports quadrupled in the past couple months. Yeah. Quadrupled.
I'd love to know why. I'd love to know why.
Well, because they're the only ones. They have a monopoly. Now there's a lawsuit on that saying you guys have monopolized the credit report industry. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's, all of a sudden you're talking $15,000 plus another $8,000 in closing cost. And then if you have to come up with another 3% for commission, certainly changes things. But while you're looking at houses, you may or may not have to come out with that out of pocket. So it's interesting. It almost does help the sellers that advertise it more, because those are the houses that they can look at. Or they can't advertise it.
Well,
they can't advertise it, I guess.
No. So one good thing that I think comes out of this is it's incumbent now on real estate professionals to make sure that their buyers understand the value they're bringing. Okay? When the buyers were having the fee paid by the seller, they were not disinterested, but less interested in really what you were doing. Just get me to the
100%.
Closing table, okay?
Yes.
But now, when they see that they're paying it, so I think it's incumbent on us, and it really should have been all along, frankly, but it's really incumbent on us as professionals to make sure they understand our value proposition, okay? At the same time, it's incumbent on us as listing agents to make sure sellers understand the value of buyer's agents, because we're suggesting, in most cases, we'll be suggesting they offer compensation to a buyer's agent, and a seller should ask the question, well, why do I do that? Okay? So it's all about communication, really, and communicating your value proposition, whether you're a buyer's agent or a listing agent, either way. So from that standpoint, I think it's good, but I'm just saying, from a financial standpoint, I think we're harming the people who we're trying to protect, so to speak.
Yeah, and just to that, I wrote down before we started talking today, one of the things I wanted to offer a testimonial about with respect to you, Mark, is I wrote down the words clear communication. And I think it is, it's so dang important, because we in the industry sometimes take for granted what are the important things to recognize during the transaction, what are the potential pitfalls, what are the opportunities, and we just kind of can assume incorrectly that our clients understand all those things as well.
Correct.
And unfortunately, I don't know if unfortunately is the right word, but we really need to be careful and make sure that we don't make those assumptions and are able to communicate that. And I feel like, in our interactions, I know that's one of your greatest qualities, and it's really just anyone listening as a potential client. Like it's so important to have someone with you who can communicate clearly, and not just to get to the table, not just to make sure you can make that issue go away, so to speak, in the client's mind. Mm-hmm. The client needs to really fully understand And a lot of that communication should be established at the outset. And, I know this is a bigger picture than what we were talking about specifically, but I feel like the specific issue of the value proposition, of the buyer agent role in the process, of who pays the commission, these are things right at the outset that need to be discussed. And
absolutely.
And so that the client can come to understand, how this transaction's going to go. And this is what I'm going to be communicating with you throughout the process. Like, I remember my sister-in-law, love her and everything, but one time she was buying a house and she goes, "I thought this was supposed to be fun," and there's a lot of hurdles, and I am going to steal your line now. This is congratulations on your opportunity to buy this house, but yeah, so again, just your communication skills are at the top of the charts, and hopefully that, if anything, and I know we're all a little frustrated with the litigation and what the results are going to be, but if anything simple comes from it, hopefully it's an enhanced communication delivery style by everyone in the process.
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate it, Pete. Yeah, I mean, I think my experience has shown me that there is almost no such thing as over communicating, okay, in the course of a transaction. And when issues arise, if you cut it down to the base level, it's frequently poor communication, whether it was not managing the expectations properly, and so therefore there can be disappointment, whether it's a seller not communicating properly about the condition of the home, whether it's what is going to happen and when it's going to happen, and now it becomes an unpleasant surprise because they're not available, etc. Many examples that where there are problems or angst in a transaction. And sometimes it's lack of communication between the agents.
Right.
Quite frankly.
Misinterpreted text message.
Oh, absolutely.
So much, we're all busy doing so many different things, and maybe the results of COVID and the nature of this industry is we can multitask to some degree, whether we'll work at night or, but that usually means we're not directly focused at times on what's in front of us. So that communication is speed, it's driven by speed and concision, but unfortunately that doesn't necessarily guarantee clarity.
No, sometimes quite the opposite. But one of the things that I do with both buyers and sellers up front is I ask them how they like to communicate. Okay,
that's good.
And then I tell them up front, we can do that, we will do that, etc. But I tell them up front, I'm old school. I believe in picking up the phone and having a conversation, because so much more can be accomplished in such a smaller amount of time if we just simply have a conversation. And every once in a while, I don't have it as much with clients, and I text, I email, I phone calls, but there are some agents, and I'm not going to stereotype, but there are some agents that they don't want to pick up the phone. They flat out do not want to. You guys probably experience it. They do not want to pick up the phone. They'll text you all day. They'll send you War and Peace in the form of a text that if they had called, some people text very quickly, but I think fundamentally you could have had the conversation, made the point in less time if you just picked up the phone. But again, misinterpretation, of a text, that's so easy to do.
Oh.
It's so easy. It's even easy to do in an email.
Not scared to put things in writing, of course. I've always put things in writing, but I feel like you do reach a better
tone is really
understanding.
hard.
You reach a better understanding when you do communicate. I'm the same way. I
My
always
brother
like to pick up the
he's
phone
a phone man for
because
sure.
it's just you want to hear the reactions. Maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree and you want something completely different. But with a text or an email, they may not have time to get back to you right away or at all, or they're thinking about it. And
Right.
it just seems like when you're in the conversation, then we can reiterate it with a text or with an email afterwards. But I do,
Right.
But I understand. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to get pre-approved that you'll call them and they're not available. You'll send them the link to the online form. They'll fill it out right away. and that's great. I do love that. That's fine
Yeah.
because then we can have the conversation afterwards.
Right.
You know, so it just depends. I love the question of, hey, how do you like to communicate?
Yeah.
That's a great question to start with.
It makes a big difference. I mean, it really does. So much of a real estate transaction is, I said it a moment ago, managing the expectations. So let's up front,
Always.
Yeah.
And that's true in everything.
It is.
Everything in life.
Absolutely.
I mean, managing the expectations is really the name of the game. If you don't do that, then people think things are going wrong when they're not.
Yeah, you got to do that at home with your wife or your kids, whatever. Of course, you got to do it with your clients.
Of course.
God knows they do it with us.
Well, and I think most things I've read over the years, when buyers or sellers are upset with their agents, it's lack of communication.
Yes.
It's always at the top.
Yeah.
It's always at the top.
Yeah, you establish that rapport. And, one of my side note, but one of my my best pals is, and I won't talk about his education or anything, but he great, very direct communicator by phone. But when he writes me a text, I need a dictionary to understand what word it is, because that thing is replete with misspellings. And he's the best English. He's an English-speaking man, and I don't know what the hell he's saying in the text.
The voice to text I use a lot.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, we do like to find out a little bit about where your thought process came from. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing, which led to where you're at now? Like, I know you went to the U High, and before that, you were born and raised here in St. Louis?
Actually, I was born in Kansas City, but my family moved to St. Louis when I was 4, so I have precious little memories of living in Kansas City.
For a job?
Yeah, my dad got transferred to St. Louis, and
what type of work did he do?
he was an accountant. He actually worked for the IRS.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when we started our conversation.
I was going to say, if Dad were still here, I'd ask him to help
Get
you guys.
the thing going.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, Dad got transferred to the St. Louis office, and so we actually rented a house, and I do have some recollection of this. We actually rented a house in Olivet because they were building a house in Warson Woods, and took about a year to build. And that house we rented is right now in the southbound lane of I-170.
Eminent domain, huh?
Yes, exactly. Shortly after, I think it was not too long after we moved out. That would have been in '64. I think they started 170 not terribly long after that.
I would imagine, they didn't want that to happen, right? Your parents, your family, they did not want to give the house up?
No, they were okay with it. The house was done in Warson Woods, so they moved out. It just so happened shortly thereafter, I think.
That was the house they were renting.
Yeah, that was the house they were
Okay.
renting. Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I grew up in Warson Woods and went to school a block from my house, St. Genevieve du Bois Parish, and from there went to the U High. And then I went to Notre Dame. I lived in South Bend, worked there for a public accounting firm for a couple of years. Then moved to Indianapolis to help them open up an office there. And then made my way back to St. Louis one time, back to Indianapolis, and then back to St. Louis.
So what do you think? What do you think got you to follow? You kind of followed in your dad's footsteps in a way.
Yeah.
What was that?
Why'd you do
thought
that?
through?
So I'm the youngest of 3 kids. Okay, so I've got an older brother and an older sister, and they
youngest.
And they are great siblings. Okay. And they were great role models
Seems
for
like
me.
the oldest. Like as far
It's
as
the beard.
Your mindset.
It's the beard.
Your mindset. You should be a little bit. You must have a rebellious side then.
Well, I grew up in the 70s.
Okay, I got you.
Enough said.
Yeah. Most people who, other than the people who grew up with me, don't realize at one point I had hair down to my shoulder blades. So, and I had a lot more of it than I have now.
I hear you.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. But seriously, so I grew up in a household that valued education, first of all. and my parents invested in my education, obviously. And I have had wonderful teachers wherever I've been. And I've always enjoyed school, truthfully. I really have enjoyed school. Now, I've been blessed to go to some really good schools, but I've always enjoyed it. In fact, I used to kid around, although it wasn't really a joke, that if it paid better, I'd be a professional student all my life.
Yeah.
I know
that's how
my
much I
wife,
liked
too.
school. Yeah.
She liked school too.
Yeah. So, so that and you know, my dad was an accountant. I've numbers have always just sung to me. I've always enjoyed math, and that's led to kind of an analytical approach. And truthfully, and I know we've been kidding about the high school question, and we have a lot of fun with that. But St. Louis U High gave me such a tremendous base educationally. Like when I got to Notre Dame, it was just more of the same. There was virtually no adjustment for me when I went there, and there weren't a lot of kids up there at Notre Dame that would have said the same thing. But I was so well prepared, and the Jesuits I think are tremendous educators, and I was a beneficiary of that. You know. They didn't worry about my hair, but if I wasn't paying attention, they worried about that. That was kind of the SLU experience, where blue jeans didn't really care, but
we're getting this right on the SLU Instagram page.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding? So you're trying to get for free or what?
My kids have already come and gone there.
Too late for that.
So did your brother go to SLU as well?
He did.
And where did your sister go?
She went to St. Joe's Academy in Kirkwood.
Okay.
Right on.
Yeah. My brother, when we moved from Kansas City, he actually was a freshman at Rockhurst in Kansas City, and then when they moved here, they just went to, at that time, the only Jesuit school in St. Louis, because they were believers in Jesuit education.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I get my analytical side is, you know, my dad had it, my brother has it too, my sister has it too, probably a little less, but it's just a relative thing. Yeah, we all just are kind of analytical folks.
Yeah,
it's a good trait to have in conjunction with your knowledge in real estate and just your love for numbers. You know, one more thing. I wanted. I hate to go all the way back, but I do want to ask you. You said, you know, value when it comes to houses. Go out into the analytical talk. You said you're very good at value, on coming up with value of homes. What gives you the confidence in that? How do you feel so confident in that when you're pricing homes out?
Well, one is experience. Okay, so I've been doing it for a while, and two is I never rely fully on that experience. And what I mean by that is every day I'm looking at what's on the market, what's selling. I follow up even on homes that my buyers ride on and don't get. I always follow up to see what it's sold for, just to make sure I wasn't missing something. Okay, so it's an ongoing process, but the experience gives me a lot of confidence. They're practicing again, aren't they?
Yeah, the air show in Chesterfield. Hope people are enjoying that.
So I think it's a combination of experience and the fact that I still do the nuts and bolts on a daily basis, whether it's in specifically for a client of mine or just for market knowledge. And the other thing is I love networking with other agents. What are you seeing? What's been your experience? And RE/MAX results, we've got 200 plus agents and really an outstanding group of agents that are willing to share, and market knowledge is just one thing that we tend to share, and I think we all benefit from it.
That's important. I think that you know, it's really easy to go Lone Ranger in this industry, but why? I mean, there's so many resources available out there, and it seems like you've taken advantage of all of them. I'm gonna succinctly refer to Mark, Lynch with experience coupled with diligence. I think is an appropriate.
Thank you.
And if you want
music to my ears.
Well,
no pun intended.
And music numbers sing to you. So
that's a fact.
Mark, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks,
guys.
us.
I appreciate you having me.